Okay. So good morning, everybody. That big out breath was like, how do I even begin? That's what that was. Yesterday, I had a beautiful gathering of family, and we celebrated my youngest's birthday. So that was really wonderful. And it was the core group of family that always come. So not like every single person, but a lot of people from my family. And I do love seeing everybody, but I realize that I cannot handle large groups of people like I used to. And my family's not even really a large group, just two sets of grandparents, brother and sister-in-law, and two nieces. So not really a huge amount of people, but what happens is that my eldest has a syndrome of his own, and I guess I'm going to name it because it might be helpful for others. So he has a syndrome called Sotos, S-O-T-O-S syndrome. And Sotos syndrome, in the 60s, it was discovered, right? It's one of those spontaneous mutations or deletions in a chromosome. Not a sex-linked chromosome, but a autosomal chromosome. So one of the others. What else do I know about it? I read on Facebook, there's Facebook groups, and I'm sure there's YouTube channels and such. And I read yesterday night while I was scrolling on Facebook, one of the young children with this syndrome had a grand mal seizure yesterday, and needed to go to the hospital. And I really feel for these new parents of these medically fragile children. And it brings me back to remembering when my eldest, who is now 31, when he was little, and what it was like to parent a medically fragile child while being very young myself, right? And with my own undiagnosed EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So a different syndrome. Now, I do think that it might be interesting to pursue genetic testing just to clear up who has what syndrome, really, because my eldest and I have some overlapping features, right? But we don't have the same syndrome. So how does that work? And he was diagnosed when he was about 6 or 7 years old, clinically. And clinically means with eyes of a doctor and the mind of a physician, right? Putting two and two together. So he hasn't had the genetic test because it didn't exist. We didn't know the gene that caused it when he was young. And then by the time he's grown up, it's like, well, what does a genetic test really tell us anyway, right? I mean, it does tell us some things, but it doesn't tell us the whole story. In any case, in the way that we're similar is the hypermobility. So, I mean, it's very possible that my son has EDS as well as Sotos, two different syndromes overlapping. So that's something that I do want to find out, because, you know, I still care for him at home because he needs care. He can't do it on his own. Life is really much too complex, you know. So, okay. So I was thinking about all those things and that big family visit. And then one of the things is that he's also autistic, right? So autism can co-occur with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and autism can co-occur with Soto's syndrome. And we really don't know which is which. And I know that I identify now as neurodivergent, and I will really fully take on the autistic label once I have undergone testing, which I'm advocating for. And I might actually get, again, even though, what is the real point, right? It's just for me to, I'm past childbearing, so that's been done, right? But it's for me to know. It's for me to know about myself and be able to definitively squash my inner gaslighter who tells me that I'm not disabled because I look okay, right? Now, anyone looking at my adult son would not think that he is okay. Like, and one conversation you would know immediately that you're dealing with a child in a man's body, right? Like, we know. Yeah. And that might be, his intellectual disability might be not because of the autism, because it can be independent of that, and not because of the Ehlers-Danlos, because obviously, right, it can be independent of that as well. But one of the things that does happen with Soto's syndrome, it is a brain-centered mostly, all right, is that it they can have seizures, and really debilitating seizures. And especially with the heat, they don't regulate their heat very well, their body temperatures. So febrile seizures when they're sick as little children. And my oldest was sick with pneumonia 8 times. I don't even know if you can even count it as separate bouts of pneumonia from birth to age 1. 8 times I counted. I wrote it down because I was astonished, and I felt like either I'm doing something wrong as a mother, or there is something wrong with my baby. And I didn't know how at the time, being so young, right? I was not confident. Like, even if I seem confident now, and I think that I probably come across as thoughtful but timorous, right? Like shy. Maybe I don't. I don't know how I come across to you guys, but I am very, very anxious and shy, and I keep a very like flat, calm exterior because it helps me keep calm inside, but inside I'm not that calm, really, you know. That's why I have to do all my art and stuff, because it allows me to calm down and actually take the weight off my shoulders for a minute, you know, and be in the moment. And that's because I've been worried, like, at my core since birth. I think we all are, right, about different things, but with reason, you know, not without reason, but with good reason. Human beings have good reason to be scared, worried, afraid, anxious, right? We need each other in order to be calm, and we need that sense of security that comes from being helped and held and loved and supported, right? We need it. We need it. We just need it. And we don't need an excuse to have it. It always gives me a lot of joy when everybody comes over, but also so much to think about and a flurry of stuff in my mind, right? Now, when Tommy was little, we didn't catch any grand mal seizures, but there were many absence seizures, and thanks to YouTube and the internet, I now know what those look like in other people. And so I can sort of remember seeing it in him. And I know that other people who took care of him said, oh my God, this child's having absence seizures. And we did go through the whole investigation trying to get electrodes on his head to know if he was having seizures in his sleep. And it was so hard. I was a single parent at that time with 2 little ones. And one of their tests, they said, you'll have to stay up all night. And I had no one to help me physically do it. I was like, how do I physically do that? How do I keep both of my children with me in the hospital, awake overnight, to see if one of them's having seizures? Like, alone. Because nobody else would do it with me. Like, it was just impossible. The ask was impossible. I couldn't do it. So we didn't do that particular test, which is probably where he was having his absence seizures that I now, well, or not absence, but other seizures, which I now understand, could have been damaging his brain and limiting his intellectual progress, or capacity, I should say, So it's hard. It's hard to parent these medically fragile children. I mean, they grow into adults who are medically fragile, At some point yesterday, my mom was looking out the window of my bedroom and watching the garden, and she saw one of the bird families that have nested and successfully raised young in our yard. And one of the fledglings was on the ground, and she was like, oh, what is that? Is it a chipmunk? And then she was like, oh no, it's a bird, because it's so well camouflaged. You can just see a little movement, and then hop, 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 there it was, right? A little baby fledgling bouncing around. And then the mother bird came and fed the fledgling, and then you know for sure it's a baby bird because it's like, feed me. And the baby's bigger than the adult. Like, how is that even possible? Is it because they're fluffy in their feathers? Like, it looks a bit bigger than the adult, But it was such an image of the care, the care and the love that's needed to grow continues even when you're grown. When you're a bird. When you're a human, too. All right, that's enough. Good morning. I love you. Be well. I'll talk to you tomorrow.